Earl, up top, rising, layup, good. It's a triple-double for Bella Earl.
Those matched up with a speedy guard. Great screen, spin move, layup, he missed it. Williamson fights for the board. His putback is good.
It is the month of August, which means team previews across the WAC. And this morning on the Straight Outta WAC podcast, we're joined by Southern Utah women's basketball play-by-play boy Spencer McLaughlin. We'll take a look at last year for the T-Birds, 25-26, the WAC era, and the move back home to the Big Sky. Spencer, thanks for joining us. How's it going this Wednesday?
I'm always ready to talk ball. Always ready for ball to get back. August is really the time of year where I'm still enjoying the summer, but I start to come around to, okay, it's time to start calling games again.
Like I said, we'll kind of take a look ahead, but first we got to take a look back. If there was ever a team in the WAC that embodied the phrase, it's not how you start, but how you finish, it was the Southern Utah women.
Yeah, it really was, certainly not the non-conference slate that they were looking for, and I'm sure that made the league view them a certain way as they got into conference play, because it was a struggle. There were games that were certainly competitive and they could have, or I'm sure they feel should have won. And the fact of the matter is it's a results business. They didn't. And so, you came into conference play off of such a great season the year prior where they went to the NCAA tournament, and it just didn't quite work out. Or from a couple of years ago, this is a program that's just a couple of years removed from making the NCAA tournament. And, the last couple of seasons have certainly been a challenge. The injuries were a struggle 2 years ago. And then last season, it just didn't quite come together right away. But then you look up at their conference record, Daryl, and you went, wait a minute, that looks like a pretty good team. Wait a minute. They're flying up the conference standings. And really in the second half of WAC play, I think, we saw what that team was fully capable of, and they finished on a really solid stretch of basketball at the end of the season, and then came into the WAC tournament and got a tough matchup with Tarleton there. And the Texans were a really, really good basketball team that Southern Utah had struggled with a bit during the regular season. And there were a lot of different teams. The gap between the 3 and 7 spots, the difference was a game and a half coming down. It was all really, really compact, but Southern Utah was right there, and didn't quite shoot the way that they probably would have liked in WAC Vegas. And so unfortunately they were one and done. But yeah, it really felt like there were two different seasons. There was non-conference, and then there was conference play. And certainly there was some serious momentum I think they picked up on the back half of that league schedule. But now you usher in a lot of new players coming into this year, and you try to carry that end of season momentum, even though it ended unfortunately with a game 1 exit in the WAC tournament. I think there were some good things to build on.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned some of the graduation losses that the T-Birds took on in the offseason, something on the order of 140 starts combined between the graduated seniors and fifth years last year. And Tracy Mason is likely going to have to find most of a new starting 5.
Yeah, it's going to be very different. There's one senior on this roster for the upcoming season, Daryl, which is simultaneously strange, but also kind of exciting in a way. And I know that Coach Mason has, I think, similar sort of feelings there. That, yeah, it is strange that you now have Southern Utah basketball that doesn't have Dela Bolina and Sam Johnston in it. And fun fact, I've never called a Southern Utah women's basketball game where those two didn't play, or at least one of them. They might have missed a game. I don't actually know that they did, because they were both so durable, consistent, reliable for their entire careers. But I'm going into year 5 calling Southern Utah sports, and Sam and Dale have been there the whole time. So it's going to be a little bit of culture shock for me personally. And I know for a lot of Southern Utah fans, that they're going to go to the AFEC to watch the T-Birds and go, wait a minute. Oh yeah, that's right. No Sam, no Dale. Like 5 years, those two have been in the program and were such an integral part of leading them to the first ever NCAA tournament. Like it's going to feel strange, but I know that the staff feels good about, the players they have to replace that veteran production. But yeah, you're just gonna have a five that, aside from Ava Urick, looks very different than it did a season ago. There were so many seniors last year, Jaden Brown and Sydney Gandy and Sam and Dela. Like that's a lot of basketball that had been played, to your point about, how many starts you're missing. And there are some really young, exciting players that are on the Southern Utah roster, but I don't think it's unreasonable to expect growing pains from time to time when you're trying to figure out, okay, who are the vocal leaders, who are the scoring leaders, who's getting the ball in crunch time. Like I think those are still to an extent some open questions, but I think that the staff feels like they did a good job in the off season, and I think they did as well of bringing in talent to replace that production, and then you have to have some young players that take a step forward.
Yeah, you mentioned some of those newcomers. Devin Kiernan, a true freshman from Mater Dei High School. Couple of nice transfers from the JC level. Brooklyn Feely, who had a really nice year at the JC level, I believe.
Really nice. Really nice. What does exceptional look like, Daryl? She averaged 22 and 13, I think it was last year at Umpqua Community College. I'm just yanking your chain, but I think Feely can be a really productive player and needs to be. Of all the new players, I think she's the one that you probably should have the highest expectations for. But I think she's really got the talent to be an awesome player for the Thunderbirds this year. But good to know that 22 and 13 is really nice. That's a nice.
It's just that translation from JC to D1 that is kind of what I'm interested in seeing.
True. No, I think that's always a fair question. Certainly there's going to be a jump there. Southern Utah has had success bringing players from the JUCO level before. Most recently, Sharita Doherty was a transfer from Lower Columbia Community College in the same region of the country, and Sharita Doherty worked out very well for Southern Utah, of course. So I think they're hoping that Feely can bring that sort of production as well and translate a lot of it. I don't think she walks into the WAC and averages 22 and 13. That's asking a lot, but I do think that her skill set allows her to really do a lot of things for this Thunderbird team, and I think a decent amount, when you look at the roster, is going to be required because of all the proven commodities that you do have on the court for this Thunderbird team. She's probably top 2 or 3 just because she's played, even though it was at the JUCO level. Like she's actually played a lot of college basketball, and you can't say that about a lot of players on the Southern Utah team.
Yeah, looking at the players who are coming back, I think it's not unreasonable to expect a big leap in year 2 from Sierra Chambers. Bella Hassan, who's getting time on the Lebanese national team. Is that what I read?
I'd have to double check because I don't want to get it wrong either. But I'm sure I can find that out here in a moment. But yeah, those two are interesting. Not the biggest guard players out there, but incredibly skilled. And I don't know if I'm sure you did see the image of Bella's floater that she hit over a girl who's like 6, I don't know, 5, 7 or whatnot. Her mid-range game is gnarly. Like it can be really, really good. And she and Sierra both last year, I think showed some real glimpses, and I think they're both capable of scoring the basketball.
And then you look at the schedule they're going to face. I think this is a pretty reasonable schedule for a group that lost what they did to kind of come into their own before the calendar turns to WAC play in the tail end of December, beginning of January.
Yeah, I think the WAC schedule is unique as the Indonesian national team. By the way, just to confirm for Bella Hassan, but the the schedule this year, playing teams three times is going to be very strange, and sadly, it's the last year of the WAC as we know it. I mean, RIP, pour one out for the good old Western Athletic Conference, but the opportunity is there. What I've found over the years, Daryl, I talk about conference realignment a lot with people like you or on my college football podcasts. Like it's certainly a big story, and I hear about it a lot from fans. And I know Southern Utah is excited in a lot of ways to be going back to the Big Sky because there's a lot of familiarity there in that particular conference. But something that I've found across a number of sports, the athletes are not paying as much attention to it as non-athletes are. Certainly, it's not that they're unaware of it or just completely ignorant to what's going on around them in that sort of space, but when you have such a long off season, mostly I think the players are just sitting there going, "Can we just play? Can we ball?" Like, sure, the travel I think will be more manageable in the Big Sky when Southern Utah gets back there, and there are some long trips in the WAC. There's some that you take in the Big Sky, and I'm sure there's some players that look forward to that. But overall, they just want to play basketball. Like, who are we playing? All right, let's go. Give me the scouting report. Let's get to practice, figure out how we need to improve. Like that's where I think most of their attention. I don't think that's unique to the women's team, to the men's team, football, whoever. I think a lot of the players are just, wondering like, okay, who do we play? Like, let's just go play. But I think the schedule works out in such a unique fashion that it might feel strange at times. You have some teams that are going to come to your arena twice. You have some teams who you're going to go and see twice. I haven't actually seen that before because I've never been a part of a seven-team conference, but that's what we've got in the WAC this year. But I think that right now it's easy to focus on that sort of stuff and figure out like where's it going to be and how's it going to fall. But I think most of all they just want to go play.
Yeah, and when November 3rd tips around, they're going to play a bunch. Obviously, leading into that opener, the road to WAC Vegas for the T-Birds starts with a non-D1 and Park University visiting the AFAC. Quick little early road trip through Big Sky Country, and a WNIT. Oh, a Washington State visits the AFAC, which that one really surprised me when I saw that on the schedule. That's a WNIT second round team that Utah Valley nearly beat in Pullman last year, making that trip, and I'll be kind of interested to hear how that game came about. But you got a mix of winnable, not some tough, and then the LMU Christmas tournament, who nobody knows who's in there except the coaches and the teams.
Yeah, it's not the first time that high-profile teams have come through the AFIC before, and I think you have to credit Coach Mason and her staff over the years for the job they've done of, maintaining connections and relationships and getting those sorts of games. It's great not just to play them, but to have them come to your home gym. You think about Utah came down from Salt Lake City. I think it was 2 years ago. Yeah, when they went to the NCAA tournament, Utah came down. Pretty sure that was it. A lot of games. I've done a lot of games over the years. They could start to really blend together, and I'm trying to like pinpoint seasons in my head after a day where I got 5.5 hours of sleep because one flight got canceled and one got delayed, and I finished work at 2 a.m. But the ability for Southern Utah to get those games, I think, is really awesome for the fans. Utah has come to town. Colorado has come to town. Washington State, like these are really, really fun games for Southern Utah fans to be able to enjoy, to see programs of that caliber come through the AFEC is awesome. I mean, it's fun for me. I love getting to see those sorts of teams, and it's rare for a program in the WAC to get a home game in those sorts of environments. But I think that it's really an awesome opportunity for the program to get on people's radar if you can find a way to win those sorts of games. I know Washington State's in the WCC at the moment, but they're a Pac-12 school. We all know it. They're going to be a Pac-12 school again starting next year. RIP, sort of. So I think that it's great that, they keep finding those chances and just have the ability to, see how they measure up, right? Like obviously in a one big league like the WAC, you're, focused most heavily on conference play, but seeing where you can still improve, how much better, like what does the next level really look like. Coach Mason's been very consistent during her tenure in Cedar City of whether it's neutral site, home, road, wherever. Go and play those games. Go and don't just have the one or two. Sometimes they'll play a handful so that they can yeah, there's a financial consideration there, of course, but they've never shied away from a tough non-conference slate because, in her view, that prepares you for your conference slate really well. It's like once you try and go up against, those sorts of programs, you come back to your league and you're as ready as you possibly can be. And I understand that on a personal level because I'm a younger brother. My older brother's 3 grades older than me. And I used to play sports against him and his friends that were also 3 grades older than me all the time growing up. And that made me better as an athlete because, if I can figure out a way to compete with kids who are old, well, suddenly once I'm going against kids my own age, like, oh, this isn't hard. You're not even that much bigger than me. I mean, they're still bigger because I'm tiny, but I think that they've done a great job of doing that over the years. And that, that makes them as prepared as they can be once conference play begins.
Um, and you mentioned the triple round robin in the WAC now. As a broadcaster, do you like if you have a team coming to Cedar twice, you prepare your play-by-play card and then just save it for the next time?
Yeah, I mean, I've got all the teams in the WAC at this point. I still have the Big Sky teams that are on my sheets, on my spotting boards, and obviously you got to update names and information and stats and all of that, but the templates are all there, and I just got to drag them around and fill in the information as needed. But yeah, I mean, it makes my life easier. That's for sure. If I don't have to put it, like if I've already done, prep for a team for one particular team, and then they're coming back to the AFEC, well, then that might save me like an hour of work because, well, I just got to update a couple stats over here. I've already got all the names, tidbits, storylines, and put in the last game stats, and then we're ready to roll. But yeah, basketball is my favorite sport to call. I'm not just saying that because this is a basketball podcast. It's always been my favorite to call. I love doing all the sports. Of course, at Southern Utah, I mean, gymnastics is so much fun, and I love doing football, and volleyball can be really electric in the AFEC as well. Softball is always a great marker for springtime and summer's near, and hearing the pop of the mitt, crack of the bat. Those are like foundational sounds for me just mentally and aesthetically. But I love basketball. It's my favorite one to call. The energy in the AFEC is always good. And yeah, I definitely always look forward to it. Like it's one game at a time. I never look like that far ahead because football season hasn't even started yet. And that's of course really busy, but it goes by quick, and basketball season will be here before we know it.
Yeah, what is it, 89 days, I believe it is, till opening night. What are a couple of your wax storylines this year with obviously GCU's gone, Seattle U's gone, which means our defending champion is gone. So
Yeah.
kind of what are 2 or 3 of your storylines as we kind of hit the stretch run of the offseason and work towards opening night?
Yeah. Is this going to be an NFL level of parity? College sports have always, and I think always will, no matter what, lended themselves towards kind of the overwhelming favorite and the teams that are trying to knock them off. And I think you saw that with GCU over the last couple of seasons. And, they didn't make the NCAA tournament on the women's side until this past year. And Molly Miller, of course, did a great job. She's now at Arizona State. But, you looked at what GCU did last year, and it was everyone's looking up at them. And there are going to be some good programs. You look at UT Arlington, they've been a really I mean, they had a real shot against GCU in that conference title game last year. If I remember, they had what, a 10-point lead, 10, 12
Yep,
point lead in the third quarter. Like that was a legit game. And how are they able to rebound after Brittingham's career is done? I believe, and I think
correct. Love is
and
gone.
yeah,
Clark
yeah,
is
Love is
gone.
gone. Like I mean, those two are awesome. Like the way they played together was really fun to watch. And Coach Wright has done a really good job. So how did they reload and try to make that push? But even with UT Arlington being a program I look at, or Tarleton, has of course come on the last couple of years. Even with those programs in the mix, I don't know that there's a program in the league, without having done my prep on every single team for the season, that instinctively I'd say, oh well, they're going to have a GCU level season. Like who, I don't think you see that. So I think what you have is a really wide open league. Certainly there are teams that you have expectations for just based on their recent history, but I think there has to feel like there's a bit of an opening, an opportunity. There's still an NCAA tournament automatic bid that is up for grabs when the season comes to a close, and unfortunately the conference comes to a close in WAC Vegas next year. But I mean, that's the number one, is who emerges, but then how big does the gap feel, right? Last year, I think going into WAC Vegas, you had this sense of, are you picking GCU or are you picking the field, right? It was like that because they were just so dominant all year long. And it was what, a 20, what did the win streak get to? 28, 20?
I think it got into the 30s because it was
Yeah,
new WAC
it
record.
might,
It passed the Louisiana Tech mark.
yeah, I mean it was crazy, and I'm not saying there aren't good teams in the WAC that'll separate themselves as top tier teams. I'll go out on a limb and say no one's going to win 28 to 30 consecutive games on their schedule with some quality non-conference wins thrown in there as well. So who emerges and how open does it really feel? Because right now I'd say, man, I feel like just about anybody could go out and get hot and win the league. Whereas last year, I think it felt like, okay, someone's got to put themselves in the best position possible to beat GCU. I think you can make a lot of different, relatively reasonable predictions about what the conference tournament final will ultimately look like. And, there's a long way to go, of course, between now and then, and how teams position themselves for that. But I think that's kind of my top one is, who's going to be the top seed going into that tournament? Who's going to be seen as the favorite? But how big is that gap really going to be? Because like we were touching on earlier, Daryl, last year, the margin between like the 2 seed and the 7 seed was what, 2 games?
Yeah, less than 2 games, I
Yeah,
think.
less than 2 games. So if you take GCU out of the WAC tournament last year, you got a cluster. You've got a giant cluster. Is it going to be that cluster, or does someone separate themselves? Do you have a Southern Utah from a
23,
few,
24,
yeah, from 22, 23, where they
22.
won
Yeah.
the regular season crown, and they were 16-2 in conference play? I don't think I know that no one really expected them to do that in their first year in the WAC because they were picked, was it sixth, seventh,
Somewhere in that area.
yeah, I think that maybe it was fifth, but I don't think it was any higher than that. And then they go out and go 16-2. So is there a team like that? But even then, as great as that Southern Utah team was, it didn't feel like GCU a year ago because that was a historically great season. So I think it's really exciting that every team can go into this year thinking to themselves, okay, we don't have a juggernaut like last year that everyone's going to have to try and get through. This is, I think, in a lot of ways, a crapshoot. And I think I just realized that phrase might be gambling related with the actual craps game. I don't know why I didn't put that together. But I think that it has the chance to be a really, really exciting season.
Yeah, I think one of my biggest storylines is how do those 4 teams that made it to the WNIT follow it up? We all know historically, right, that the teams that play in the WNIT or the WBI, for the most part, have pretty solid seasons the next year. So that group of CBU, ACU, UT Arlington, Tarleton State, that's one of my biggest storylines is how will they follow up success?
Yeah, Tarleton last year, I was really impressed with Tarleton when they came to the AFEC. I remember watching that game and they beat Southern Utah. And, of all the teams that Southern Utah could have faced once they pulled themselves out of the play-in game that was ultimately between Seattle U and Utah Tech, I remember saying to myself, man, I wouldn't want to see Tarleton again. And then unfortunately Southern Utah sees Tarleton in the tournament and they lose their first game. Not that the other teams weren't good, of course, like we saw that, but just the athleticism that Tarleton had last year, I thought was something that made them really dangerous, for a Southern Utah team that has always had really good size, but is not necessarily, a freakishly athletic team year in and year out. And, you know, Tracy Mason has always had some really big post players who are not necessarily fleet of foot, and that's something they tinkered with a lot last year. Where Jaden Brown started the season as their starting five, and then it was kind of more of a bench role, and they wanted to play Lexi Bowl a lot more because it let them get out and run in transition, and they did want to do that a bit more than maybe they had. But you look at the new players that they brought in. And they bring in a girl like Nike Borg, who's over 6 feet tall, and their lone senior Ashley Banks is 6'5", and Brooklyn Feely is 6 feet tall, and Ava Urick's around 6 feet tall. Like they have a lot of length, and that's always been, I think, a staple of their team in the way that they have recruited. I do think it's at least a little bit funny that their post players coach, Jay Johnson, who I can say this because he's a good buddy of mine. He's about as tall as me. He's like 5'9", but he coaches the post players and does a great job. Don't get me wrong. It's just funny that he's out there and the girls are towering over him as he coaches them up. But their post play's always been really strong, and the defensive presence that you have in the middle when you have serious height like that can pose a challenge for a lot of teams. And so those sorts of chess matches I think have been fun to watch over the years. But whether it's Lizzie Williamson or Jaden Brown or Ashley Banks, you can count on Southern Utah to have a serious shot blocking presence in the middle. I mean, Ashley Banks, this year, if she's able to stay healthy for a full season, could easily be an all WAC defensive selection.
All right, Spencer. Before we close it out here, let's kind of take a look back at the WAC era. I know we still got one more campaign to go, but give me, 3 or 4 of your top games that you've called in the AFEC over the last, handful of years.
Gosh. Dude, I'm so unprepared for that question. I assume we're keeping this on the women's side.
You can blend over some men's if you need to.
Yeah, we've been talking women's. I'll keep it there, man. It was. There were a couple last year, frankly, that stand out. Unfortunately, Southern Utah didn't get the win in either one of them. But the Utah Valley game last year and the UT Arlington game were matchups that came down to the final possession, really, and Southern Utah was down big against Utah Valley and climbed their way back. Like, frankly, they've had some pretty crazy home losses. I'm sure there are really good ones I'm forgetting, but 2 years ago, pretty sure it was Stephen F. Austin, came to Southern Utah, and the Thunderbirds hit, I think it was 8 threes in the first half and had a 25-point lead, and the Lumberjacks came back to win. That one was wild. Oh man, there have been so many great ones. It really has been an awesome conference to be a part of. The competitive depth has been there, and I think there are plenty of Southern Utah fans and people affiliated with the university that are excited to go back to the Big Sky because there are a lot of traditional matchups there, and the geography is maybe a little bit easier. But I think the best thing that came from Southern Utah going to the WAC, the basketball was awesome. Other sports have had plenty of great moments. Don't get me wrong. The basketball was awesome. The leagues were really good. I'd say Southern Utah against California Baptist. I wasn't on the call last year when they came back because they were on the road, and I do mostly the home games. When they came back against CBU last year, and Belina had, a go-ahead scoop layup with 8 seconds, and they that late comeback. That was awesome. There was another game against CBU the year they went to the NCAA tournament, and CBU was, of course, really good that season. Sharita Doherty had a go-ahead drive down the left side, finishing with the right hand off glass, and was kind of the icing on the cake. I think they were up 4 with like 30 seconds to go, and it was Sharita Doherty doing Sharita Doherty things. You can't talk about Southern Utah's time in the WAC and not talk about maybe the most iconic shot in the history of this program.
Yeah.
Speaking of Sharita Doherty, that one's got to be up there. Like that led the Today Show. My mom watches the Today Show and has for a long time. After it happened, she texted me a video like, "Oh my gosh, your team is on this," and I'm like, "Oh, whoa, this is really, really taking off." So. The game in Vegas and the clincher to go to the NCAA tournament was, of course, such an awesome moment for the program and the celebration down there. I'll never forget that. First year in the league, pick to finish middle
fifth or whatever
third.
It was.
Yeah, and to just come in and win, that was really, really awesome. So those are certainly some of the ones for better or worse that stand out. But there's still one more, and there have been so many great games, and I'm truly privileged to be in the position I am, where I get to call all these games and call it work.
All right. Southern Utah women's basketball play-by-play voice, Spencer McLaughlin, thank you so much for your time on this Wednesday. We're 89 days from opening day, and 2 weeks from the start of football, right?
Yeah, football starts unofficially August 23rd, week 0 game, Kansas State, Iowa State, Farmageddon played over in Ireland, but August 30th is the official week 1 kickoff of the season. Southern Utah has got a lot of excitement around the program this year. All FCS opponents this season. It's going to be a really, really fun year, I think, in Cedar City for sports. And as always, I can't wait to be a part of it.
All right. Thank you so much for the time, Spencer.
You're welcome, Daryl.
Thanks for listening to the Straight Outta WAC podcast. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting platforms. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Remember to follow us on Twitter at WAC Hoops Digest and Facebook under WAC Hoops Digest for all your WAC Hoops news and information.